Welcome back to the Untangled podcast, where we explore how plausible an obscure alternative reality really is. On Thanksgiving evening 1971, a man known only as Dan Cooper hijacked Northwest Airlines Flight 305. After receiving his demanded ransom money, he parachuted out the back and was never seen again. Did he get away? Did he survive? And who was he? Join us today as we untangle the D.B. Cooper mystery, examining a plethora of loose ends and leads of aviation's most notorious caper. And just before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe for more enthralling content. We hope you enjoy. Welcome back to this podcast of ours, the conspiracy, theory, and mystery podcast known as Untangled. So thanks for clicking, thanks for listening in. I'm Simon, and I'm joined today by Ryan and Han. And if you're a regular listener, you may have noticed our uploads have been a bit slower lately. Han, do you want to tell them about the sad state of your life?
The saddest. Oh my god, I feel attacked. Well, basically, I've been working on my thesis for the better part of 3 months now, and the last month or so has been really rough. So, and the following 3 weeks are going to be rough. So that's kind of been messing up my entire schedule and all of my headspace. So, yeah, I guess I'm taking the blame for this.
No, I
Simon.
was going to say,
All of it.
my life is not much more happier. I mean, I did finish my thesis last year, but I had the same issue you had where I was completely dead for the entirety of May. But this May is the busiest month for work, so I've been completely dead from work. So, we've both been pretty busy, so it's equally split between the two of us.
It's just miserable.
I almost feel bad how open my schedule is.
I was going to transition like that, Ryan. So please tell us about the beauty of those open time slots. How is your Outlook calendar looking?
Just a bunch of camping trips, and I've got 2 weddings to go to this summer.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I'm excited for that, and yeah, I just have a very open and relaxing summer ahead of me. So sorry that I've got the complete opposite of you guys.
No worries. I mean, it's how life goes.
I'm jealous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, ebbs and flows.
Can live vicariously through me.
Ryan, you're the first recurring guest we're having on this podcast so far. Are you happy to take up that mantle?
Yes, I feel so honored, so special, especially that you'd be willing to put up with me again.
Again.
The first one was fun. If you want to check out the first appearance of Ryan, we did one on. Do you want to tell them what it was about, Ryan?
Yeah, the lost cosmonaut theory, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And
that was
were
a
you
fun one.
convinced?
Yes, I'm pretty sure. Maybe not all of the parts of the theory, but just like the base claim that some cosmonauts died before Yuri Gagarin became officially the first one to come back down. I think so.
To be fair, I think that might be one of the more plausible ones we've done like across the board, because some of the other ones were slightly more far-fetched.
We'll see about that. I mean, it's going to be a little bit different today, Ryan, because we're doing less of a conspiracy per se, but more of a mystery. And what are mysteries if they're not conspiracies?
Exactly.
But the way we like to, ease into this, I'll ask a bit of an icebreaker for today. And this is one which goes very well for you, Ryan, because you've just had some kind of criminal record or security procedure check. So I'm going to ask in a way which is not at all some kind of crazy question given to me by some Canadian government official. What's the most illegal thing you think you can do and still get away with?
I don't know if I should answer that.
I know, but this is all hypothetical to any
Yes.
thesis agents listening in.
Very hypothetical. That is an excellent question. I would be lying if I said I haven't thought about that before.
That would be illegal.
Well, no, the thought.
Yeah, not yet, at least.
Depends on where you live.
That is a really good question. I feel like one thing that's pretty easy to get away with is like felony tax evasion.
I mean, taxes you just win, so don't say that too loudly.
But no, I think that would be the easiest in terms of like a federal crime.
True. Yeah, I think I could agree with that.
It just seems the simplest. It's to get away with, because there's just so many ways to cover your tracks plausibly, and I remember another guest, or maybe not of this podcast, but a previous one you've done, Kevin. I asked him once because he was in accounting, like
He got away. He got away with tax evasion.
I asked him if he thought he could get away with it, and he said, "Oh yeah, absolutely." So,
yeah, well, we'll have Kevin on in the near future because I was talking to him earlier today watching a soccer game, and he was like, "When do I get on?" So he'll be on in the future sometime.
A tax evasion podcast.
Exactly. What about you, Han? Is there anything? I mean, the Dutch criminal code, a bit more lenient, right? Nicer jail cells. No?
Is it? I mean, the jail cells are pretty nice, but I guess I don't know how Canadian jails
Straight to
are.
an igloo and none of it.
Dutch jails are
Yeah.
really
banished.
Oh my god. banished to Canadian Siberia.
Gulags up there, yeah.
the Canadian
Those ice
gulags.
highways don't build themselves, so.
To be fair, you guys are the country that is most likely to have the most, not likely, but the most apt to have gulags as well, because you have a barren wasteland, frozen wasteland as well. The most criminal thing I think I could get away with, Jesus, I don't know. I'm very unskilled, and I've got I'm pretty sure that tax evasion would be hard because honestly, our tax the system of tracking down people who do tax evasion here is pretty rough. Like they're pretty on their business of watching where every single cent went. So I don't know.
Interesting.
I may or may not still owe the Dutch government €100 from a year ago.
They're coming for you.
You just admitted
They're
to.
gonna come
I
for
may
you.
or may not, and I don't know how to pay them.
Yeah, I feel like this is going to be a thing that you forget about, and then in like a year or 10, 20, you go back over the border, and then they're like, bam, motherfucker, here's some compound interest.
Just like,
oh, wait, yeah.
They'll just put this recording up when you're in your court case.
No, I tried to pay them back. I sent them a check, and they rejected the check. I'm like, what the hell? But, so I'm like, what am I supposed to do now? So now whatever. Sorry, Han, go on. What illegal thing have you not done and gotten away?
All right, so I think I could get away with murder.
Ooh,
I think I could.
That's a big one.
Okay. I think so too.
I think it's possible. Depending on who, what, and what situation, I think it's definitely possible to get away with murder.
I've read a lot of random things on the internet about that. I don't know how reliable.
Well, sometimes you just want to Google how do I get away with murder and see what happens.
Although here's the problem with like watching, like those like serial killer shows and stuff is we only learn from the ones who get caught.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
it's the survivorship bias. So like, who knows how many there are actually out there?
To be fair, you can just kind of look at the obvious mistakes they made and then learn from that. So it also helps.
Also, if you contain yourself and only murder one person instead of multiple.
Well, I mean, after that, the bloodthirst kicks in. It's
that's
just
the biggest danger.
It's just serial killer all the way from there. There's no way back.
I think I could get away with some smuggling. I think, given how much smuggling happens, I think I could totally do it if I could drive, and I can't drive. So. No,
like what kind of smuggling?
If you could drive. Oh my god.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like it's easier to get stuff across the border than we think it is, because especially like in Canada, you can just hop 5 miles to the side and just trek through and you're in.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it's the world's longest unguarded border.
Well, yeah.
That's true.
Okay, I'm gonna run a hypothetical scenario by you and tell me how plausible you think you're able to get away with it. Because this relates to the main topic. Air piracy.
Air pirate? What? As in
air piracy?
Hijacking an airplane?
Yeah.
Well,
because if you think about it, if you hijack an airplane, you have hostages there, nobody else on board, and you can demand them to fly you somewhere where you could kind of get away, or you can jump out.
But why would you do it?
I think I know what this one's about.
I think you do, right?
Yeah, I know. I'm pretty sure.
You are American. Well, you are somewhat American, so this might have some place in your heart. But do you think you guys could ever get away with air piracy?
Absolutely not.
No.
I think The case we're about to talk about is quite the outlier. I'm pretty sure. Like, I don't
Yeah,
think
I
it's
mean,
ever gone well.
I'd be the guy that gets jumped by the passengers. Absolutely.
The air marshal that just immediately pops me in the head.
Yeah, exactly. Or just the upstanding citizen that just knocks me from behind or something, or tackles me.
Mhm.
if I had to let you guys guess, how many successful cases of air piracy do you think there have been in history?
In history.
All of history. I mean, since
Well,
planes were invented, obviously.
not a
But
lot.
Like,
Not a lot, I think.
yeah, I would not assume a lot either.
give me a ballpark number.
Like,
10.
yeah, I was gonna say like 10,
Well,
between 10 and 20.
the fact that my argument for that is that they only really beefed up security after 9/11.
Hmm.
Like, if it happened way more before that, then they would have already had some measures in place. So
Okay.
that's my,
The
that's my
actual
guess.
answer is there's only been one case of air piracy that ever got away.
Oh,
Got
okay.
away. Oh, got away. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I thought it was
One successful case of air
Oh,
piracy ever.
yes.
And we're going to be looking at that case today. The case we'll be looking at today is the only successful case of air piracy in history. And it's one that's always kind of fascinated me because, I don't know, I just like the intrigue of it and the fact that there are so many plausible answers to this case that we don't know what's happening. So it makes it a real mystery. Ryan, I hinted at the subject and you seem to
Mhm.
know. Do you want to take a guess at what we're talking about today?
Oh, it's a true American legend, DB Cooper, right?
Ooh, yes, you guessed correct. Or
Yeah.
was he Canadian or European?
Oh, I mean, maybe. I don't know.
Well, we'll talk about that. Have you heard of the mystery of DB Cooper, huh?
I have not actually.
Oh, I'm kind of surprised actually that you've never heard of him.
I'm a European. We don't do American.
I mean, I guess that's fair. Yeah, I shouldn't expect that.
It's a very tantalizing tale. But to give a really quick synopsis of how it happened, and then I guess I'm going to ask you guys. It's normally we do like how much do you think you believe this theory, but it's less of a theory. But I'll ask you guys to guess what kind of actually happened in a sense. So, in November 1971, some guy got on a plane and flying from Portland to Seattle, and on that plane, about halfway through, he was like, "Yo, I have a bomb with me. I'm going to make some demands. You guys gotta land, gonna let go of the hostages. You gotta fly me away to Mexico City." So that all goes as planned. And then as they're flying to Mexico City, the guy jumps out with the money, never seen again. That's the case of DB Cooper. And it's the only unsolved case of air piracy that ever happened. So did he survive? Did he die? Did he even do it at all? Those are the big questions.
Did he even have a parachute?
He did have parachutes. We'll talk about it. But it's quite fascinating because I don't know, Ryan, you've heard this case before. What do you think happened?
That's the greatest mystery of it is that there's so much unknown about what happened to him that like I really have I don't know what to believe about it or what to think. Like it is truly one of those like unsolved mysteries that will very likely never be solved. I really doubt we're ever gonna really find out what happened.
Well, we
Um,
will find out what happened today in this podcast because you guys
oh,
will make an
Okay.
educated guess on this podcast. But no, let's get into it because the way we're going to structure this little today is I'll go give a more in-depth history of like the exact like timeline of the crime, and then we're going to go a bit into what happened afterwards, if it's plausible that he even survived the jump, and then we'll look at a bunch of potential DB Cooper suspects because I have like 20 people that could plausibly fit it. And so I have
Oh,
like
wow.
10 or so pretty cool ones and then also some nice tangents. But without much further ado, let us get into it. The date is November 24th, 1971. As a quasi-American yourself, Ryan, you know that this is the all-hallowed Thanksgiving evening. So, you know, a lot of people traveling around. And,
well, I actually didn't know that
okay, well,
because it's different. It's different each year. It's
I guess that makes sense. But regardless, it was Thanksgiving evening, 1971. And there was this one flight hopping Northwest Airlines flight 305, going from Portland to Seattle. It was a nice Boeing 727, carried 40-ish passengers, a few pilots. Took off at 2:50 p.m. It's supposed to be a 30-minute flight, a hop from one city to another. Regardless, on this flight, there was one man who went by the name of Dan Cooper. So we actually have the exact ticket he bought. That was one of the only pieces of evidence that remains. So we could kind of see his handwriting, wrote his name, Dan Cooper, booked the flight, paid for it in cash, booked the day of. And because this was 1971, no security checks, no luggage checks, no nothing.
Smoking in the airplane. It's amazing.
Exactly. And this guy was kind of a badass to some extent because all accounts of him was, a middle-aged man, good looking, average height-ish, like 5'10"-ish. I mean, for us Dutchmen, it's a bit below, but around the world, it's a
Tiny people.
yeah. The guy wore a black suit. He had a black attaché case. Looked very professional. He went down, sat in the back row. He ordered a bourbon and soda, sipped it, smoked a few cigarettes. Seemed like the real classy man, as you do in the 70s.
Mhm.
Anyways, a bit through this flight, there was this waitress. His flags are down. He's like, "Yo, I have a note for you." And she's like, "Thanks." Puts it in her pocket. She doesn't look at it. She thought he was trying to hit on her and gave her number to him. But he turns back to her and gives this infamous line. Do you want to read his line for us, Han?
Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb. Oh, that's
Yes.
it's pretty cool, to be honest. That's a pretty cool line.
He just takes off his aviator shades. "Miss, I have a bomb." But regardless, took it quite a bit more seriously then. So she sat beside him in the seat, and he shows her the case. He opens it, and she does attest later on that it looks like he had a few sticks of dynamite in that suitcase. So
Just a few sticks of dynamite, just casual.
Mhm.
No ticking time or anything. Just a few
As
sticks
one
of dynamite
does.
and a lighter.
yeah, just like flick, flick, flick. Yeah. Anyway, he gave his demands. He demanded three things. First thing, 200,000 American dollars in negotiable American currency. Key line for later on. Please remember that.
Interesting.
What was the word? Negotiable.
American currency. Yeah.
Okay.
The reason it stood out is because normally you don't ask that. You just ask, "Yo, I want 200,000 in cash."
Wait, how often have you attempted air piracy that you are so familiar with the process?
I'm just saying, there's been only one unsolved case of air piracy. So either
What's
I'm really good at it or I've never done it.
Just to clarify, what does it mean, negotiable?
I think it means that you can just trade it in at banks and stuff like that. The reason people think I'll kind of go a bit ahead in my planned storyline, but the reason it stood out to people is because they assume maybe he's a foreign traveler, where if you asking for a negotiable American currency is something maybe a European or Canadian or a different traveler might do. So it was just a weird language phrasing that they.
Yeah, that's strange. Yeah.
Also, real quick, I looked it up that 200,000 would be worth almost 1.4 million today.
Oh wow, that's a lot of moolah.
Nice payout. He also ordered 4 parachutes, 2 primary and 2 reserve parachutes. He made sure to specify this. This was also kind of a genius move on his part because if you order 4 parachutes, or basically parachutes for 2 people, the police didn't, or the FBI didn't tamper with these parachutes in any way because they assumed if he orders an extra set of parachutes, he might want to take a hostage with him down. So if he does that, you can't give a bad parachute. So I kind of respect that because it's kind of a really smart way of doing it.
Yeah, it is pretty smart, actually.
That's clever. Yeah.
And he also ordered a fuel truck to be standing by in Seattle to refuel and take off again. So the interesting thing is people seem to kind of like this guy. So there's a few quotes about him on the flight. Do you guys want to read maybe one of them?
The flight attendant? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he seemed rather nice. He was never cruel or nasty. He was thoughtful and calm all the time. A true gentleman of the air.
Oh my
Yes.
god. And apparently, the man himself said, "I don't have a grudge against your airline, miss. I just have a grudge." Wow.
Which is kind of a baller thing to say.
I feel like is this actually true, or is this guy just being mythologized to hell and back? 'Cause he seems like almost a criminal James Bond kind of type.
Yeah, I mean there are real ones out there.
And even if you look at his the profile the FBI constructed, it's supposedly extremely accurate because he's sat on the flight for several hours with the flight attendant. So they got a really good look at it.
Well, it looks like James Bond. That's my first thought. Kind of looks like kind of looks like Sean Connery James Bond. To be fair.
Yeah, a little bit. I definitely got that what is it? That classy kind of 50s look to him.
Yeah, exactly.
Apparently, Tina Mucklow, the flight attendant who Ryan just read the quote from, she even claimed that he tried to tip her while she was gathering he was paying for his drinks, which is also kind of funny.
quite polite of him. Maybe he is Canadian.
Exactly. The flight landed in Seattle. The passengers all got off. They actually didn't even know the plane was being hijacked. So they were kind of quite surprised at the ruckus once they got off the plane. On the plane, he was given the ransom money. The bank actually paid at the time. So the way it worked back then is that Northwest Airlines was part of several banks, and they actually had reserve funds of money just for these cases if they happened to happen. And it was not uncommon pre 9/11 for airlines to just negotiate or pay a ransom, something that doesn't happen anymore these days. So if anybody's listening to this podcast looking for air piracy tips, don't try it, first off. And second off, you're not going to get paid.
Yeah, you should have done it before.
Apparently back then they did negotiate with terrorists.
Yeah. Well, as some would say, he was white, so he wasn't a terrorist.
Who
But
knows? Maybe they tried negotiating in 9/11 as well, and then they just decided, you know what, this was a bad idea. Why did we ever incentivize this?
yeah. But what was cool is because this was a specific fund of money for hijackings and stuff like that. These bills had all been noted and microfilmed, so they knew the serial numbers of each one of these bills, so they could track the money if he ever spent it or did anything with it. So if he ever tried to use it, he would kind of be screwed. So it was interesting. And the other cool thing is he didn't specify how he wanted the money, so they just paid him $20 bills. So it was a lot heavier of like a parcel. But I think he overlooked one thing.
That's actually pretty funny. Like that's a good strategy.
Just giving someone $200,000 in pennies or something.
Yeah,
What?
like just
What?
trucking them in.
What do you want? We gave you what you wanted.
I read some story about like the world's dumbest criminals or something like that, where this one guy, someone was successful in this, but you know those money trucks that shake the money from like stores and stuff? So he like camped out near one of those and just ran in the back and grabbed a bag of money and tried to run away. They eventually caught him, but it turned out he stole like $100 worth of pennies, like a huge.
Oh, he picked the wrong bag.
Exactly. Regardless, when they landed in Seattle too, he also ordered all the blinds in the planes to be closed, including the shades up front to like protect from snipers, was his logic. And he also declined a face-to-face meeting with any FAA officials and stuff like that. So he got the parachutes, he got the money, and he was actually quite unpleased because the refueling took 2 to 3 hours longer than expected. And this was completely outside the FBI's controls. Apparently the airport just screwed up like twice. And I know, it's airports, yo. And he said, quote unquote, they shouldn't be taking this long, indicating he had some prior experience with refueling planes.
I think he did his research. That goes to show.
Yeah, I mean, and it's stuff like that that's my favorite part of these kinds of stories. You can never account for people just being incompetent at their job.
Yeah, I mean, he was getting quite annoyed. So his plan was to fly to Mexico City. He wanted to fly direct, but the pilot was like, no, we need to refuel. So they agreed to refuel in Reno, in Nevada. He also gave very specific flight instructions for the plane. So the plane had to fly at the lowest possible airspeed, 185 kilometers per hour roughly, as well as the maximum altitude. And it had to fly with all its flaps down, and wings up to like keep it that slow. Another special thing about this case is that the plane that he hijacked was a Boeing 727. So a really cool feature about the 727 is that it was one of the only commercial planes which had a rear aft door. So a rear aft door is kind of like a door in the back of the plane that opens, which can be accessed from the cabin. So he also asked for the rear door to remain open during the entire flight, as well as during takeoff. The pilots actually told him that it wasn't possible for the door to be open during flight, which he was kind of surprised at. So he said, yeah, sure, you can open it during flight. They showed him how to do it, et cetera, et cetera. What was neat is that actually these planes can take off with those doors open. So it was like a really specialist piece of knowledge, which commercial airline pilots were never told because it never really applied to their kind of line of work. He also ordered all the remaining crew. So I think it was 3 pilots and 1 waitress he had still on. They all had to be in the cockpit. So basically it was just him alone, back of the plane. And plane took off 7:40 p.m. What are your impressions of this guy so far?
Pretty smart guy overall. I'm actually I'm suspecting now, just based off of his intimate knowledge with a Boeing 727, he could be like a Boeing employee because there's a big Boeing factory in that area in the Northwest, like between Seattle and Portland, or maybe just north of Seattle.
But regardless, he just did his research really well. Apparently, I mean, if you're schooling a pilot and how his plane works, then pretty smart.
I will also say that 727s were actually used a lot by the CIA during Vietnam War, which was around that time as well, as a way to launch paratroopers into like behind enemy supply lines, as well as to drop operatives in other zones, just because of the rear aft door and stuff like that. And they were just a handy plane to have.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So he could have been a vet.
He could have been. So he had the knowledge. Anyways, plane was in the air. 8:05 p.m. The pilot said, buzz him on intercom, was like, yo, you want anything else? He's like, no. And that was the last he ever heard of him. At 8:13 p.m., the pilots registered kind of like an oscillation, they called it, into cabin pressure, so where DB Cooper was, and which they thought indicated the rear door had been opened. And when the plane landed, there was nobody on board. What was also interesting is that the plane took off, the FBI had two fighter jets try to follow it, but the plane was flying too slow for the jets to keep up. But they also had a helicopter trying to follow it, but the helicopter was too slow to keep up the plane because that was too fast. So it was kind of really neatly planned out like that as well.
And it was also at a very high altitude, right? I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That is really smart. He really thought his shit through.
Yeah. It's the small details you got to think of.
Yeah, like these are the kind of stuff that we see in documentaries where they get caught.
I mean, you guys are complimenting how much well he fought it over, but there is another serious camp which thought he was just an amateur doing this kind of for fun. Because the one thing we didn't talk about was that night. I showed you guys a second ago a picture of the plane at the airport. I'll flip to it again. Can you tell me how that night looks?
In what, the night itself?
Yeah. Very wet, very rainy, very stormy.
Oh, yes. Yeah. You see all the puddles on the ground.
Yeah. And apparently, I mean, don't forget, this was also November.
Yeah.
So, given all accounts, it was a pitch black night, 172 miles per hour winds from where he would be jumping. And yeah, I think it was brutal temperatures, like below freezing, just basically storms out there. Terrible conditions for jumping. And we have to remember, Cooper didn't request any protective equipment for the jump. So he jumped out of this plane wearing a trench coat, a business suit, and just business loafers.
I mean,
that's stylish.
That is James Bond style. That is.
It's also kind of stupid because the FBI, upon hearing this, assumed he just died because that was their assumption that this man could not survive this fall.
I mean, what was the altitude again? Did you know?
I believe it was about 3,000 meters, or the highest possible the plane could fly.
You can jump that.
At a stormy night? Wearing only a business suit?
I mean, the business suit thing isn't really a problem because you'll be fine. Like you'll be very fucking cold and wet, but like I don't think you really need protective equipment for that altitude. But the storm is definitely a bad idea.
Another point to note is that the parachutes he had. So he didn't specify what parachutes he wanted. So the FBI was like, okay, we'll give him a choice of two. They gave him a military parachute, so an older model basically. And this parachute was unsteerable. So once you open it, you can't steer it because it's just a military one. It also had like a manual ripcord you had to rip out. So imagine jumping out of a plane, unsteerable parachutes with a manual ripcord. The other model, which he left on the plane, he didn't take it with him, was a civilian one, which was steerable and had like a better opening system. So if you were smart, you'd probably take the civilian parachute because that one was actually good. Meanwhile, he took the one, and you could just imagine him falling up the plane, no protective equipment, a parachute he can't figure out how to ripcord open.
I don't know. The way that he planned out so many of the small details, though, maybe he like that was on purpose to throw them off his trail more. Because if we go back to like his knowledge of the plane and the fact that these planes are used in Vietnam, he presumably might know the difference between these parachutes.
I would like to point out this picture, which is just fucking hilarious because it looks like he's literally like jumping face first out of the plane and just flapping his arms around.
Yeah,
this does not look like a successful jump.
Not graceful.
No, not at all.
But that's kind of the point, because some hypothesize that if he took the military parachute, maybe he was more familiar with that parachute, so he might have been like a military jumper.
That's what I was thinking too.
The more you think about it, it could have just been an amateur guy who got kind of lucky, was pretending to be really cocky, threw in a parachute and was like, oh damn, now I have to jump. because it kind of reinforces it too. When the last time they buzzed him was like 3 minutes before he jumped, I can just see him standing on the door, like, okay, should I do it? Should I not? Should I do it? Should I not? Are you going? Do you need anything? He's like, shut up! No, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, it does make me think of I think it's like a Mike Tyson quote where it's like everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. It's kind of like this, like you have a plan, but until you have to actually jump.
Yeah, maybe he was just really good at planning everything else, but then when the part came where he had to execute the plan, the most difficult part of the plan, he didn't actually know how to do it. I mean, bringing a stick of dynamite on a plane at that time was probably not too difficult. Like staying cool, I guess he could do that too, but jumping out of an airplane is kind of difficult, especially if you've never done it before.
Another thing to note, just before you guys ask, because I know you're pretty good sleuths here, is that you might be wondering, what if he had an accomplice waiting for him on the ground to like help him, navigate the stormy winter weather? Well, the thing is, he didn't choose the flight path. He had no input at all on the flight path. He just said, "Get me to Mexico City." The pilot suggested Reno, and there are several flight paths to Reno. The pilot just chose one at random, which was the normal taken one by civilian airlines. So people hypothesize that there's no way an accomplice should really have been able to know where that plane was flying or even near where Cooper would have jumped.
Yeah, that logistically would be pretty difficult to plan that out.
It's also pretty dumb if you think about what his flight path is, because Reno, Nevada is kind of in the desert, and between Reno, Nevada, and New Mexico and Mexico City, there's just a whole bunch of desert.
Yeah, well, remember, he did jump really close. Still, I think in Washington State he jumped. So he ended up in like a woodland area. We'll look at it in a second.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
even landing his parachute would be kind of difficult because trees all around. There were a bunch of rivers, also a big lake. So it was literally like jumping into Bigfoot country, as you might know. From there on, the FBI launched a huge, massive manhunt for this one guy, to recover his body or see what happened. They actually spent most of early 1972 using over 200, I think, like National Guardsmen and stuff like that, just scouring the forest. You can kind of see all the pine trees in the background, that kind of stuff. But they spent that time and they didn't come up with any single clue, came up with nothing at all. And that persisted throughout the next 5 years. Nothing at all submerged. He seemed to have just disappeared into thin air. Additionally, the money that he stole, they had all the serial numbers of it. However, they never found a single bill of that money that was spent. They even circulated all the serial numbers to the public, and several newspapers began offering like $1,000 if you found one of his $20 bills, stuff like that. Nothing was ever found in public circulation to this day.
That does go to the idea that he died.
Exactly, because I mean, if you have that money, you're not just gonna sit on it.
Maybe he knew that they had all the serial numbers.
But then why would you do this, right? Just for the
For
fun of
the
it.
thrill of it.
To be fair, he probably did, because that is pretty standard practice, right? For most banks to be aware of that, especially if an flying company actually has like a bunch of money that they use for this kind of stuff, then you'd expect that they'd have the serial numbers down of that money, because that money is going to go one way.
Yeah. Also, like the fact that he planned out the speed of the plane so perfectly, I feel like something like taking the serial number into account, he probably would have thought of that.
But then why did he steal the plane? Like, what's the real motive then? Was he just a thrill seeker, or just randomly he's like?
Honestly, it could be. Like, you never know.
But I mean, he said he had a grudge, so
Yeah.
I feel like he definitely maybe just wanted to make a point and just give something or someone
he
the
didn't leave
finger.
anything behind.
Maybe that was the point.
Yeah.
Or like I'm curious, how much money did the FBI spend looking for him?
I mean, I'm sure it was quite a bit. I mean, the case lasted for 45 years. They have, I think they interviewed over 1,000 suspects, stuff like that. Insane numbers. Nothing.
Maybe that was the plan, was to just waste FBI money.
Real disgruntled employee. However, I did say no bills had ever been found in circulation. There have been a few money found of the DB Cooper stash, which the serial numbers were matched and everything else checked out. So this happened almost 10 years later in 1980. So this 8-year-old kid named Brian Ingram, shout out to Brian Ingram if he's listening, he was playing in this place called Tina Bay, which was pretty close to, well, it was a bit away from where they hypothesized he had jumped because they had exact timing of the jump, so they can kind of do a quick rough estimation of the jump site. Anyways, he was playing and he dug up some money in sand. And his parents were like, "Yo, what's this money from?" Eventually, they handed it over to like the police and they checked it and they were like, "Wait, this is the DB Cooper money." So they went back to the sandbank and they dug it all up, like the entire bank of sand. Like you can see pictures here of them just tractoring it all out. But all they ever found was 3 bundles of money. It was about like $300 or something in total. That was all they ever found. The interesting part of it, and the really interesting part of it, is that first off, this money was found in a site that was upstream from the place where Cooper would have jumped. Secondly, this money was also more intact than they thought it would have been if he had jumped in 1971. So, for instance, they were wrapped in plastic bands, which hadn't deteriorated yet, despite those plastic bands deteriorating typically in 2 to 3 years. So it's just found in a really weird place. One of the hypotheses that some people have is that the way he jumped, he might have landed into a nearby lake, and then his body would have been dragged out on a boat, and that money would have floated onto the bank, and that was all that remained. And then when they reconstructed the bank, it could have shifted somehow, but it's a really, really far stretch. The better hypothesis some people have is that he came back and buried it there just to screw with people.
Yeah.
Because that's the easiest possible explanation, or the Occam's razor, as you like to say, Han.
Yes, Occam's razor.
It's still not a very, very Occam's-y razor. It's still not a very simple thing. Like, you'd have to survive, not spend the money ever, and then decide, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to fuck with people. By burying it in this random hunk of sand. Like, you can fuck with people in so many ways that are, like, more likely to actually get results. Like, this depended on one kid digging up one bill in a mountain of sand. Like, that is not a plan. That doesn't sound like a very...
You could have been running the long con. Just...
But it's also weird, even if he did survive the fall and he lost, and like, let's say he didn't survive the fall and he died and this was the evidence of it, why did they only find 3 bundles of money? Like 3 random bundles out of like I think he had like a few thousand or something probably in his bag.
To be fair, that it might be possible that they were just scattered into places that nobody found. Like if he did fall into a river or something, or a lake.
Yeah, maybe. But if they were scattered, they did a pretty extensive search of the area and no bones, no nothing of his belongings. Regardless, let's take a quick look at all the evidence that we have of DB Cooper. And then afterwards, we'll kind of say if we think he survived or not. And then we'll get into some suspects. So let's look over the first thing, the plane ticket. So the one clue about the plane ticket he bought is the name that he gave, Dan Cooper. You may realize, and maybe I'll title the episode this way, that he's often called DB Cooper. He actually never gave the middle name B. Some newspaper just made it up and it stuck because it sounds cool. But the interesting thing about his name is that in the 1930s, 40s, there was this European or Belgian comic called Dan Cooper, which I put some pictures up there, and is about a pilot, a military pilot, who was a helitrooper and jumped out of planes.
Well,
people think maybe he took inspiration from that comic and named himself after Dan Cooper. The one issue was it was never really translated into English. So how would he get a copy of this comic? So maybe he was like served in Belgium during World War II or just served overseas. Other people think maybe he was Quebecois or something like that. And then he had one of those comics via that way. Because one of the things to note is that all the people said he spoke with no distinguishable accent. And you know, us Canadians, we are indistinguishable from Americans beyond our polite manners and tipping culture, I guess.
Are we sure he didn't say no before he jumped?
Sorry.
Sorry,
Sorry about the money.
Sorry, madam. I don't have a grudge with you. But I feel like there is another explanation of this, which is just you could just like French and learned it. To be fair, I mean it's still far-fetched, but
Mm-hmm.
Is it
Yeah,
is it that big of a stretch that an American would learn a second language? I mean, yeah, but
I mean, according to all the documentaries and stuff I read on this, none of them mentioned, oh, maybe you're just an American who liked it. The most they went to is some Americans serving abroad who picked it up randomly in Belgium and liked it there.
yeah, I mean, maybe. I mean, this was the '70s. This was before the internet was a thing, before everything was everywhere.
Yeah.
So I guess even then, I feel like this could be explained by random chance. Dan
yeah,
Cooper,
like
like why is it so similar? Like I feel like this is a good comparison.
Okay. So you're not going to look for a Canadian at the suspect list. That's what I'm getting from it.
Well, maybe, but maybe Belgian immigrant,
mm,
Belgian
yeah.
roots immigrant.
I find it interesting, like how they specify like no discernible accent, like perhaps he practiced at,
Maybe.
like
Yeah,
Maybe.
it's possible.
Anyways, we also have remaining on the right hand side, we have the extra parachute. I went over the parachutes a little bit. This is just kind of one of the clues. Nothing was really lifted from it. There was also the backpack on the side was about the size of the pouch of the money he had. So people kind of theorized he tried strapping it to his chest and then jumping with it. A cool thing to note is that there's a bunch of old people who have nothing better to do in the time but obsess over DB Cooper. And some of these are actually pilots, and they have done a few experiments of trying to jump out of a plane with a bag of money strapped to them, fake money.
Oh my god,
And from all the discernible tests, and keep in mind, these people are like 60, the conclusion was
they all died.
no, they survived. But apparently, he couldn't do it without letting go of the money. So maybe Cooper jumped, lost the money, and was like, oh, screw it, and then just disappeared that way. Because I think that might be somewhat feasible if he just didn't get his payday. Because that explains the money not being used and maybe the bills being found. But
Maybe he just dropped like as much as he needed to drop it, and then just kind of
yeah.
scattered it in the wind, and then the rest of it he could
he's
keep
like,
in
I
the
only
bag.
needed a 20, you know?
I do think like the likelihood of him dropping it is probably pretty high because of just the stormy night, and
Yeah.
it's one thing to parachute out into a stormy night, and then doing it while you're holding a bunch of money is
Yeah,
gonna be hard.
no, it might just be that he kept as much as he could keep for the jump, and then just scattered, and then the rest just kind of ended up in random places. So, like with the kid.
And the other thing that was remained, he apparently wore a clip-on tie, and that's also what he left behind. They also, at one point in time, had 8 cigarette butts. Apparently, smoked 8 cigarettes. First thing is they lost those cigarette butts, the FBI. So good job, FBI.
Fucking idiots.
They had 4 pieces of evidence, but no.
Lost.
No. We have 3 pieces of evidence.
They did lift some basic DNA and I think some fingerprints. I think it was mainly DNA. I think from the tie or somewhere else. Anyways, they had some DNA that they also used. Well, we'll talk about when we get to some suspects. The first, this is profile.
I'm sorry. I just love the sunglasses on the profile. It makes him look like such a badass.
Yeah. He was wearing those, right?
Yeah, he had sunglasses he would put on occasionally or something like that. But yeah, so the first suspect I want to talk about, I thought this was hilarious, and almost none of the stuff that I watched mentioned this. I just found in some random news articles, but this is legitimate to happen. The first suspect the FBI had was this man named M. Cooper or Michael Cooper. So apparently, on this plane of 36 passengers, there was a second Cooper.
Poor guy.
I know. So he was a high school teacher, I think from Portland or somewhere. He just got on the plane to take a flight for Thanksgiving or something like that. So when he got off the plane, nobody knew the plane got hijacked. So they got called into a room, and the FBI did a roll call, and they were like, "Okay, this person, to find out who was the hijacker who stole the money." So they were like, this person, D. Cooper, is he on board? D. Cooper. And then the guy's like, I'm a M. Cooper, if you have that. And the FBI's, yeah, sure, check. They got to M. Cooper, and they couldn't find an M. Cooper. So the FBI screwed up doing basic roll call and thought this guy, Michael Cooper, was actually the suspect. So
Oh boy.
apparently in 1970, the FBI also didn't keep these people too long because he headed back home. And lo and behold, here is his account of what happened when he got home. Does one of you want to read this quote?
Go ahead, Ryan.
All right. The top news story, of course, was the hijacking, he said. I was watching the footage when one of those messages appeared along the bottom of the screen saying the FBI was seeking Michael Cooper, a high school teacher from Missoula, Montana, in connection with the hijacking. This can't be true, Cooper said to himself, and I just got up and went to bed. It was just too much for me to deal with.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so imagine getting home after a flight, turning on the TV, and seeing you're wanted for a hijacking of a plane.
I love that response.
Yeah, just I'll just see you tomorrow. We'll see. We'll figure it out when I've gotten some sleep. That's fair enough. That's a good attitude, I think, to
This
everything.
guy was just done.
Look, I had a long flight, and the FBI is after me for a plane heist. Let me please sleep.
It's also funny because it also had repercussions because they called his work as well, stuff like that. Apparently, he had taken off early that day without really telling anybody from work. He was like, "Yo, can you watch my class? I gotta catch a flight." So here's a quote from his boss. Han, do you want to read this one?
All right. So the FBI agent, oh no, wait, the boss, Cooper's boss, remembers the late night telephone call. The FBI agent was most empathic. He said that they had positive identification that Mike Cooper had hijacked an airplane between Seattle and Portland. My brain was reeling, Harbaugh said. I remember thinking, you mean Mike Cooper checked out of school early to hijack an airplane? Say what? Say what?
Things you don't know about your coworkers.
Yeah.
He seemed so nice.
The next day, the FBI realized their mistake and was like, "Okay, we gotta look for a D Cooper now." Apparently, Michael Cooper was a bit pissed off, and that's why he gave all these interviews because they never apologized to him. They just stopped looking for him one day. They never said, "Sorry, man, for like doing a statewide manhunt on you."
That does kind of sound like the FBI, but on the other hand, it is a really good pickup line.
That's true.
Hey, I'm wanted by the FBI. This is
They're not searching anymore.
They're not searching anymore, but I used to be. Fun fact.
What I want to do with each of these kind of suspects we have, I want to let you guys kind of rate how likely this was actually DB Cooper. Let's say out of 10, because that's what you do. So 10 being a positive identification and 1 being completely not at all. So for our man, Mike Cooper, do you think it was DB Cooper?
0 out of 10.
0, yeah. Easily a 0.
This is just a guy.
Unless DB Cooper played the greatest trick ever and somehow managed to do something like that.
That'd be some usual suspects kind of shit. It's just like,
Yeah,
he's gone.
that'd be real magic.
One of my theories that stuck to me while I was doing the research is the name DB Cooper or Dan Cooper. Nobody knows where it came from, maybe the comics. But I was thinking maybe he was standing in line behind Mike Cooper when he was filling a ticket. And he was getting a name. And he's like, "Yo, Cooper, let me screw with this guy in front of me." And he took that last name.
Honestly, that could be. That's
Yeah, it
plausible.
does honestly seem kind of plausible, yeah.
And keep in mind, one of the ones we'll get to eventually, his name was Dan himself. So maybe. Anyways, sorry.
It might be, but it might also. I feel like he'd be prepared enough to have a name. Like you know, you're gonna have to fill in a name, so he probably had something in mind already. I don't think he'd make it up on the spot. Although that is pretty cool if you're like, nah, I'll figure something out.
Yeah, we'll worry about that.
Just try lying about your name. It's pretty difficult. Like if you're not a good liar, it's kind of difficult to say you're something else. It's a pretty big lie.
I guess so, yeah. So first, real suspect. This man was named Kenneth Porter Christiansen. He was a flight attendant who worked for Northwest Airlines. So this checks the flight knowledge and knowing planes, stuff like that box.
And the grudge.
He does, because apparently he was getting pay cuts from the Northwest Airlines despite being a dutiful employee. He was actually suggested as a suspect by his brother, Lyle Christiansen, who watched a documentary on DB Cooper and was like, "Yo, my brother was the man." He had a few other pieces of circumstantial evidence. He smoked, and he also liked to drink bourbon. That was his drink of choice.
Yes, because no one back then
That was just
drank or
what I was
smoked.
saying. No. That is very particular.
Additionally, according to his brother, he suspiciously bought a big house with unspecified amounts of money shortly after the crime.
But where was this brother?
I don't know. didn't say that much about the brother. However, I will say the brother tried to sell the story as a book somewhere. So maybe there's a bit of a bias going on. Anyways, the FBI rejected this candidate, saying there was no physical resemblance to D.B. Cooper, and they said they had a pretty strong profile. So, yeah, I will say, unfortunately, the man next to the D.B. Cooper FBI composite is not quite as handsome as D.B. Cooper. So,
Yeah, exactly.
so what do you guys think? Is our man Kenneth Christiansen? Is he our D.B. Cooper?
I'll give it a 1. I don't.
He had the
Like,
grudge. He had the knowledge.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those coincidental things, and then a relative just trying to sell a story.
Yeah, that's what I think too. I mean, I'll give it maybe like a 2. I could see this happen in some universe, but it seems pretty implausible.
Yeah.
Okay, next one. This man is named Duane Weber slash John C. Collins. I'll get into this slash in a second. So he was a World War II Army vet. He also served time in at least 6 prisons from 1945 to 1968 or something, mainly for burglary and forgery. So he had some knowledge of sums of money. The reason he popped onto the radar is because several days before he died, he held his widow's hand and he was like, "My dear widow, Joe, I have a secret to tell you. I'm D.B. Cooper." And her response was, "What? I can't hear you. Speak up. Who's that?" And then he replied, "Ah, screw it. Let it die with me," being quite annoyed. Anyways,
How was it recorded if she didn't hear it?
well, she heard the name D.B. Cooper and she's like, "Who's that, honey? I don't know who that is." And then she got quite annoyed.
Also, did he actually say "my widow"?
Oh, my widow.
The quote is, "I am D.B. Cooper." I may have lavished some of the details around it, but
Oh my soon-to-be widow, I am dying.
So Shakespearean.
Very.
Anyways, she did some digging, Joe. I mean, she needed to do something while she had some free time in her retirement, which I guess a lot of these cases end up retired people doing their own sleuth work. But she did make some discoveries. She discovered her husband had a secret second identity by the name of John C. Collins. And apparently, this second identity, John C. Collins, had rented a room that night under that name in a Portland motel the night of the skyjacking. So he was in the area.
Under a fake name as well.
Exactly. And the lead FBI agent on the case, Ralph Himmelsbach, he'll come up again. Han, do you want to read his quote about Weber?
Weber does fit the physical description and does have the criminal background that I've always felt was associated with the case.
Suspicious. Eventually, the FBI said his fingerprints and DNA did not match the ones on record, but knowing how shoddy this evidence can be at times, perhaps. What do you guys think? Duane Weber, is he your man?
I mean, in terms of background, definitely. I think he's definitely the strongest so far of the
Absolutely.
three. And the whole double identity thing, that's it's pretty interesting. That kind of tracks. But I don't know how much he does kind of look like him, the composite sketch compared to the picture of the guy. But there's still his eyebrows are too thick. Way too thick.
might have grown him out.
That's true.
If that's your method of hiding from committing a big crime, growing out your eyebrows, I think you need a better disguise.
Well, to be fair, it's the first thing Ryan notices. So if I grow out my eyebrows, no. You can't be the same guy. Your eyebrows are way too thick.
He looks a little like that actor. What's his name?
Are you thinking of the Canadian one?
No.
The one with the really thick eyebrows, the Canadian one.
No, the guy from Jurassic Park, and he was in the new 4 movie.
Oh, Jeff Goldblum?
Yeah, a little.
Kind of.
I guess.
A little bit.
Yeah, passing resemblance.
But he does look a bit like the guy from Schitt's Creek.
Yeah, that's who I was thinking of. I can't remember his name.
Only Canadian show I've ever seen.
Oh, you got to watch more.
What's your rating on Duane Weber out of 10? Han, go.
I'll give it a 6. Like, plausible.
Okay. Ryan?
I was thinking 4 or 5.
You see,
Okay.
I think we're because I'm thinking in European grading systems. I don't know if you have those. Like a 6 is barely a pass for me. So
Yeah, like
which one?
5 is passing,
Ah,
and
okay. Still, thought you had A's or F's and that kind of stuff.
yeah, like a 50 is a.
You're
I guess it
failing.
depends.
Regardless, let's not argue
Okay,
the metric
it's not
side.
relevant.
Yeah, let's not go down that path.
Next guy. Is this the right guy? Sorry.
What is that? What is that
That guy
picture?
looks very
This
off.
Very
Okay, they
shifty.
didn't have that many pictures of him, but his nose kind of matches. But regardless, this man was named Lynn Doyle Cooper or L.D. Cooper. Suspicious, right? He was a letter worker and a Korean War veteran, so he had some experience, in the Korean War, paratrooping, etc. The bulk of this evidence comes from his then 8-year-old niece, Martha Cooper, who in 1971 remembers her uncle, so L.D. Cooper, as well as another uncle of hers, talking about hijacking a plane and saying, that's going to set us out forever, or all our money troubles will be over. He also mentioned they were preparing something mischievous, and in- including the use of walkie-talkies.
Oh no! What schemes abound?
Yeah.
Anyways, he did live 150 kilometers from Portland, so he was in the area. We could theoretically have, coordinated maybe with walkie-talkies. The next day, the day after the hijacking, apparently he came home with a bloody shirt, which was suspicious. Never
Ooh.
elaborated. And also, apparently, he was a big fan of the Dan Cooper comics.
Okay.
And to top it all off, after Christmas 1971, Martha Cooper never saw her uncle again.
1971?
Yeah, the year of that happened at Thanksgiving. So like a month later, never saw it again.
Oh,
So
didn't it happen in 72?
did I maybe mess up once? It was 71. My
All right.
apologies.
Oh, okay. No, I also might have.
Anyways, what do we think of Lynn Doyle Cooper, L.D. Cooper?
Well, an 8-year-old girl's testimony isn't really super convincing.
Yeah, I don't know. Like first impression was like a 0 or a 1, but some of the details are interesting. Maybe a 4.
Yeah, I think I'll go with a 5, like slightly less than the last guy, but
Okay, I'll take it. I'll take it. Off to the next one. This one, his name is Richard McCoy Jr. He served in Vietnam as a demolitions expert and a pilot, and he was also an avid skydiver. So he wasn't really a suspect on the day of the case, but we have to go forward in time a bit to April 1972, so 6 months after the DB Cooper hijacking. That day, he decided to take a flight on a Boeing 727. There, in the plane, he grabbed out a fake gun and a hand grenade and was like, yo, I'm hijacking this plane. Give me $500,000 in cash, as well as 4 parachutes. So he got the parachutes, basically exact same thing DB Cooper did, and jumped out of the plane. And he made it. He landed it alive. Although this time, apparently, he brought his own jumping gear. Like he came onto the plane with like his diving helmet and like suit. So he was a bit better prepared. So I think the FBI even said something like, if somebody would have done it, they should have done it like McCoy did, where he actually brought their diving gear. The other funny part about this, apparently he hitchhiked back after jumping out of the plane. So some random like passenger by, I imagine, just saw him standing in the field with a bag of money and a parachute and just picked him up,
Yeah.
which is pretty incredible.
And sorry, was this before or after
6 months
DB
after.
Cooper?
It was apparently allegedly inspired by DB Cooper. Like several of his friends attested that he was like, "Yo, if I did what Cooper did, I would have asked for $500,000, stuff like
Yeah.
that." And I mean, he
well,
did.
gotta commend him for sticking to his guns, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyways, he was a pretty civic person, but the cops started putting 2 and 2 together, and he was arrested 2 days later for the crime. He was actually arrested while he was in the National Guard flying a helicopter looking for John McCoy,
Oh
or the guy
wow!
who robbed the plane.
Oh wow!
Ah, classic.
So he was sentenced to 45 years in prison, but he escaped a bit early in 1974. Again, he used a fake gun, this time made out of dental paste.
Wait, what?
Yeah, he commandeered a garbage truck and escaped to prison. And he was killed 4 months later in a shootout with the FBI while he's trying to rob a bank.
Oh,
Wow.
wow, this guy. I feel like this is not DB Cooper because he's just way too flashy. He's more like
Yeah.
like a thug, just gun swinging, grenades and shit.
Apparently, in a 2021 documentary, his wife, or his late wife, and his children admitted that he was DB Cooper and that his wife was a bit in the background helping with the planning. And apparently, their sister had babysat the children for him because his alibi was when the FBI came knocking around that, oh no, he wasn't here. He was at home with me with my children. Well, actually, the children were with his sister, and he was just out with his wife robbing a plane.
I don't know about that.
But the thing that makes me doubt this one most is that he actually took the military parachute instead of the regular one. Like, why? If he's an avid skydiver, he would he wouldn't go for that one.
Exactly. Like, this definitely seems like it's just a copycat person, and
Yeah.
then the family trying to cash in on a mystery again.
It does kind of look like it, but he's also like his eyes are way flappier. Like you would.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
And
it.
again, the eyebrows. don't
Again,
match.
again, the damn eyebrows might have still grown him out.
Maybe I'm thinking the DB Cooper one was like a test run where perhaps he tried to do it without his diving suit. He tried to do it taking the military shoot, and then he just lost the money and was like, screw it, I'm going to try next month and then ask for double. And then he actually did it.
I don't know. It just seems odd that he would try it without the suit in the first place. I feel like that's something
Yeah,
an avid parachuter would consider from the beginning. And again, like he's just copycatting. So he saw what someone else did, saw the flaws, and corrected for them.
but even then, I wonder, like, how did he jump with $500,000? Because that's
Well,
a
he
lot of
survived the
moolah.
first time. Like he got away. They found the money in his apartment.
Yeah, no, what I mean, like, how did he jump out of the airplane?
He just took the back stairwell. Same thing Cooper did.
Well, yeah, but
But
didn't the other, like the older people that had experience try it out with jumping with that much money? And
Well, the conditions were much better apparently too in this one. Like it wasn't during Christmas time. I mean, during like the winter.
yeah, okay, I guess
he also had double the money as well.
yeah. So
Maybe he asked for better bills. I'm not sure, but apparently he did.
He got it in hundreds instead.
Yeah, this time he knew. Anyway, let's rank our man. Let's rank our man Richard McCoy Jr.
I'm not so sure about this one. I mean, maybe like a 5. I'll put him in between the other two.
Yeah, 5 or 6 to be generous. I'm pretty convinced he's just a copycat
Okay.
copycat person, but props to him for succeeding.
Sort of.
Oh, he didn't
Sort
get
of,
away.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, but the fact that we actually know this much about him is just interesting to me.
I like the garbage truck escape though. That's pretty baller.
Yeah, I mean, he's a resourceful guy, clearly.
I mean, I like the gun made out of toothpaste. That is
That's
fucking
clever.
awesome. That is very. I mean, I wouldn't even know how to start with making a gun out of toothpaste, let alone make it convincing. But
He does look a little bit like a dentist.
maybe that was his background. He was a
No, he
dentist.
wasn't. He was just like a army guy.
Could have been a dentist in the army.
Maybe. Here's the guy. This one, we even have a picture of him in a parachute. His name is Ted Mayfield. Teddy, my man over here, a Special Forces veteran, a pilot, a competitive skydiver. He was also a skydiving instructor. He had been arrested for armed robbery in his youth, and in his later years, he got arrested quite a few times because apparently several of his students, while he was instructing them, died in a failed parachute thing. But
Oh
that's
God.
neither here nor there. So yeah, he was suspected from the beginning by the FBI chief, the lead FBI agent, Hammersfield. Apparently, they had a personal like vendetta against each other, and they like scruffled a few times, and they didn't have a good relationship. So he's the first guy that came to mind, but he was ruled out. Guess why he was ruled out?
He was too fat.
Alibi?
He had an alibi. He personally called Hammersfield 2 hours after the Flight 305 landed. He called him for some random reason, for nothing in particular. He just ended up randomly phoning up his arch nemesis Himmelbach, being like, "Hey, yo, what's up? How you doing?"
Hey, fuck you.
Yeah, exactly. I just wanted to tell you you're a fucking asshole. Click.
Yeah, so their logic, Himmelbach's logic was he could not have possibly called me only 4 hours to jump out of a plane in the middle of nowhere, run to a phone, and call me.
Yeah.
Imagine what. Also, I mean, imagine if that did happen, though. How fucking clever is that? Like, how many chess moves is this guy ahead that he would do that? Just jump down, look for the first phone you can find, and call the guy you think is going to be leading this investigation or something, and just call him an ass or something. You're like, yeah, that'll make it so this is so implausible. He'll never buy it.
But there are some people who say he could theoretically have done it in that time frame, and that Himmelbach should have actually investigated him a bit more, and he might have done it. So maybe it could have worked.
It might just depend on where he landed, right? Because he couldn't steer it, and then it's also just he just jumped out of the random spots. I feel like that's not something that could have been part of his plan.
He could have mapped out where the nearest payphone was.
Yeah, but how could he have mapped out that? Like, he jumped out at the random time because he didn't know the flight path, and he also had a parachute he couldn't steer. So
Maybe he got lucky. Like he did
Yeah.
call 2 hours after the plane landed. Like ideally he should have called while the plane was in the air or something.
right, 2 hours. Like how
Or
long
you could
was
just
it?
gone to some random person's house, be like, "Yo, you want $100? Let me use your phone."
And yeah, let me use it.
Yeah, here's a giant bag of money on my back, and I'm just gonna pull up. That is convincing. Yeah, no one's gonna think that's suspicious.
Ryan, you seem deep in thought. Is this one tickling your fancy a bit?
This is because before we started digging into this more, like as we started talking about DB Cooper, I've had it in my mind that like he's just one of the greatest trolls in history. Like a guy who didn't do it for the money. He did it just to fuck with people. And this is kind of funny to me, like that he had like this professional rivalry. Like maybe this was all just to to fuck with this guy.
Was this the grudge? Was that the grudge he was mentioning?
Yeah.
Just to fuck with Himmelsbach.
Yeah,
like-
I just have a grudge as FBI agent who I'm gonna embarrass for the rest of his professional career because Himmelbach
Yeah, like
did spend.
that's pretty funny to me, like, especially the call afterwards too. Like, I don't know. I don't think I really believe it's him, but
You want to?
this is
You
the
want to,
funniest one
yeah.
to me, and I want to believe it.
Okay, well, what do you rate it though, Ryan? Because I'm gonna press you for that.
I'll say 7, a solid 7.
That's good. It's a B average student, you know.
I think it's still below the first one. We talked the first one I thought was pretty plausible, so I'm gonna rank it below that, like a 6. Yeah, 6-ish, slightly less maybe.
Okay, so I have a picture to tie up again because I'm gonna throw a spanner in the works. Some new evidence emerges. So, led by Tom Hay, there were a bunch of older retired people who had too much time on their hands, and apparently the FBI was so stumped for clues in like a few years ago, they were like, "Yo, have this tie, do something with it fun." So they ran the tie through a radio spectrometer.
Of course they did.
They
Like,
ran it through an
that's-
electron microscope.
That's the first thing one should do when you have a clip-on tie.
Absolutely. Why wouldn't you?
They found on the tie some suspicious particles. So apparently it contained particles of pure titanium, which was extremely rare in the 1970s. And it also contained rare earth metals such as carnium and strontium sulfide, which had only a few applications. One of those was being the supersonic transport development project at Boeing, and the other one was some Catholic ray tubes or something like that. So, with this information in mind, let's look at a few more suspects. This dapper, smiling man we see here was according to one FBI agent who interviewed him, she said he was the most interesting suspect she had ever interviewed in her FBI career. His name was Sheridan Peterson. Notice Sheridan, Dan, and he went by Dan.
Yeah.
He served in the Marine Corps during World War II and was later employed as a technical editor at Boeing. He was also quite a bit of a thrill seeker. He was apparently an experienced smoke jumper, which he did basically for fun. Guess what a smoke jumper is, if you've never heard it.
Jump through smoke. Like,
In the smoke?
while smoking.
So back in America, in that area, they had large forest fires sometimes. So apparently, sometimes they wanted forest firefighters to be dropped behind the fire. So they would have these guys fly over with a parachute and then jump behind the forest fire so they can fight the forest fire from behind. So he did that basically for fun.
Okay.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty. I never knew it existed, but it's pretty badass. So yeah, a reputation taking a lot of physical risks. He also had a physical appearance apparently, and he also had a similar age, so around 40, mid 40s, around the time when the crime happened. And a cool thing, while at Boeing, he apparently parachuted for a promotional video or something they were shooting, dressed in only a business suit, while carrying a 50-pound sack of wheat strapped to his legs. So he had done this before in some sense.
It's gotta be a lot of wheat.
That is a lot of wheat. Holy shit.
He also had a grudge, this time against the US government.
Don't we all?
While he was in Vietnam, he was asked to leave Vietnam by the US ambassador at the time because of his undying advocacy for the South Vietnamese people. I don't know how that's connected to hijacking an airplane, but he had a grudge.
Interesting.
I feel like that grudge might be too broad, but
yeah.
However, one last thing though is that he had an alibi, unfortunately. Do you want to guess where he was in this alibi?
he was smoke jumping.
Mexico City.
Too close to home.
Vietnam, South Vietnam.
Well,
Yeah, Vietnam.
Closer. He was apparently actually in Nepal, raising 2 children in a mud hut while writing his accounts of South Vietnamese atrocities committed by US soldiers.
What the fuck?
Wow. Okay.
And apparently that was enough to get him off on this.
What you think? Being literally on the other side of the planet is an alibi?
Seems suspicious.
Yeah,
Too convenient.
It's 2 kids. Why would he have 2 kids in a hut in Nepal? That doesn't sound plausible at all. No. Also, you can see on the picture on the right, it's got a mole right below his mouth.
Oh yeah, that's true. I thought that was a smudge on my screen at first.
I think I'm pretty sure that's a mole, which is not represented on the picture. And as everyone knows, moles are the first thing you see. So this is not the guy. This can't be the guy.
Also, while his eyebrows look more reasonable, the shape of his face, it doesn't taper off to the chin. He's got a more rounded jaw.
He's also too droopy. Like his eyes and nose are all a bit more droopy than the picture.
I will say he doesn't look like a guy who spent time in a mud hut in Nepal. Like he looks like a banker.
I mean, what does?
What does that look like? Good question.
Could be anyone.
I will say, I just personally, when I was reading for all the suspects, I kind of thought this one fitted the most, just because he did, do a lot of these jumps. He was a thrill seeker. He just seemed like the guy who was bored one day and decided to do it.
But
yeah, like I think background wise, it definitely seems the strongest, but I don't think so. I think there's too many structural differences in the face.
Yeah, you're putting a lot of emphasis on the composite though. But
Well, it is because like you said earlier, they had a really good composite because they spent so much time with him. They have a really solid idea of what he looks like. So
yeah.
I think unless this guy got some reconstructive surgery, which I don't know how advanced it would have been back then, I don't think so.
maybe they've got some really good facilities in Nepal in the mud hut.
In the mud hut.
That's what they've been hiding in Nepal in the mud huts. That's just the world class face reconstructing, plastic surgery.
So final ratings on Sheridan Peterson.
Sheldon.
Gotta go with a 0 on. Gotta go with a 0 on that one.
You got a 0 on this one?
Yeah.
I would personally.
This
one was the one I thought was most likely, to be honest.
Really? Oh, this one is the least plausible by far.
Maybe this says a lot about me then. I don't know.
I was thinking, this also, like, despite his background, I think he has by far the strongest alibi, seeing as he was thousands of miles away.
He just said that though, I think. Like, I don't know if they actually tracked down his plane ticket and everything.
I'm sure they tracked some aspect of the story.
They lost a quarter of the evidence in this case.
Okay, I'm not saying there's not some incompetencies, but
there's plenty.
There's plenty of fair enough.
Whatever. I'm not. It's your guys' you guys are the jury here.
But I think the mole gives it away.
Yeah, I think the mole is that couldn't have been the guy. Everyone, if you look at a guy and you're like, oh, you got to describe him. You're always got to look at like the deviant features of somebody's face. So you're gonna say, oh, he had a beard and and a long nose and a mole or something like that. These are the features that stick.
I don't think his mole was that bad, and if I was going to describe him, I would not even mention the mole.
I would.
Just
But
hands up.
maybe that's
Yeah,
me.
I think I would describe it as well. Like especially the people that spent like 4 hours on a flight being hijacked by this suave
Maybe
guy.
he just sat on the other side of the seat, so he didn't see them all.
What? Oh, he never looked. He never looked to the side. He just sat. He just sat next to her and just talked like this to her.
Yeah, the flight attendant even specified that.
Yeah,
She specified that in her account.
So
He happened to never look on the left side.
It
of
might have looked a bit like Two-Face from Batman. I would not be
Yeah.
able to say for sure.
Okay. This last guy I'm going to go through, his name is William J. Smith, and he's a favorite of more modern D.B. Cooperners or D.B. Cooper enthusiasts for some reason.
D.B. Cooper's.
Yeah. Anyways, he was also a World War II vet, and he worked at a railroad, which people thought was significant for two reasons. One, he could hop on and off trains because he would have this expert knowledge of the American train system to escape pretty quickly, explaining why nobody ever saw him again. Which,
Okay.
to be honest, I thought any of these guys could have probably done. But
Was there a rail nearby?
they just said that somewhere, and I took it at face value. The second reason it was important is because they said that his tie might have picked up on these materials while working at a rail yard, which was plausible at the time.
That does seem more plausible, definitely.
He was also fired in 1970 because the railroad company was failing, maybe due to the advent of airplanes coming around and taking all those jobs. Maybe, no, I don't know. But that could have been the crutch.
That seems much more dubious to me.
I mean, it could be. It's like airliners took my job, so I'm gonna take the money back from
Took
the
my
airliner.
train job.
Maybe it was like passenger train. I think it was more the shipping yard, but regardless.
He really loved his trains. They took it.
Anyways, the last piece of evidence that in his high school yearbook, he had a classmate who died in World War II, and his name was Ira Daniel Cooper.
I don't know. This one seems weird.
Far-fetched. Like, yeah, you know what? I'm gonna rob a bank and I'm gonna give a fake name. You know what? Let's use the one from my dead friend as an homage.
Yeah, like is there even any evidence that they were friends? Like it could just be a guy.
It was
from
just
the
one of these old people I think found in one of his yearbooks. Honestly,
Oh my
because
god!
people have too much time.
They went through his yearbooks. Holy shit!
and half of them live in like Arizona. I'm like, of course you're doing this. There's nothing to do there. But anyways,
Fair enough.
let's rate this last guy.
Nah, zero.
They're
Really, that's
Not plausible,
you guys
not
are really
plausible.
pessimistic about this.
no, we're not pessimistic. We're critical.
The only strong piece of evidence is the tie, like the material from the ties. Like I can see how like on a rail, like working on a railroad, you get that, but grudge doesn't make any sense. And then what he happened to know someone with the last name Cooper in his entire life.
Yeah, I will say you guys are much more pessimistic than the accounts I was watching. So now I'm like, okay, maybe there is a reason why these were never seriously considered by the FBI or whatever. Whatever.
You've just been. This is the risk of doing any kind of conspiratorial podcast, man. You're getting sucked in.
Yeah. And like heck, using half the evidence for this guy, I knew someone named Cooper in elementary school.
Oh no!
Does that mean I'm
Ryan?
I played a video game once with a guy called Cooper.
Oh jeez,
Oh
yes.
god! And I've heard of people called Dan.
Oh, Dan.
And was it me? Was I DB Cooper?
Maybe we're in a conspiracy here. Simon.
Maybe I'm not just DB Cooper, but I'm also the time travel guy, and I just travel through time to do the DB Cooper shit.
Yeah,
Nice.
Well, the DB Cooper case had like a lasting legacy. Do you want to read what our guy Himmelsbach said about this case?
I'd love to.
Go for it, right?
He used foul language to the stewardess, Himmelsbach said, according to a 1996 story in the San Francisco Chronicle. He's a sleazy, rotten scumbag, and I hope he died a miserable, wretched death.
Wow, Himmelsbach has been going off on this guy. What kind of foul language did he use?
And I love like contrasting that with the stewardess's account. He was really nice.
Yeah. And I just love the image of like Mayfield just sitting there like, ha. I loved it.
Yeah, see, I like
Rattled,
the Mayfield
rattled.
one is even stronger to me now, knowing this.
that he actually he did manage to get to Himmelsbach. He did it.
Yeah. He's pretty pissed.
He seems pretty broken up about it. What, 25 years later?
And out of all things, it's the foul language to the stewardess.
Yeah. I think this is just the last half of the quote, but yeah, I just thought it was funny.
What did he even say?
But by all accounts, like Ryan was saying, all the stewards, like polite guy, really nice guy, didn't strike me as an air pirate guy at all.
No, maybe he just said "damn" somewhere. I don't give a damn or something, and then
Yeah, back then that
this
was
is the
quite,
70s in the U.S. Like people were strange, an odd place.
I will introduce a third theory, which doesn't have as much traction, but I think there's some credible evidence, and I kind of made it up as it went along. Well, I didn't make it up, but I put points together.
Oh,
But what if this was an inside job? As in, I will point out the evidence. They could have just easily wrote a ticket, had maybe some guy dress up. Like he sat in the back. People didn't really notice him whatsoever. Maybe they didn't even know the plane was being hijacked. When they landed in Portland, he closed all the curtains. He denied meetings of any negotiating people. Nobody saw him except for the airplane crew. And this also explains why they never found the body. They never found the money. Split it amongst each other. Perfect guy.
an elaborate like insurance scheme. I don't know, like
Well,
because
they just got the
would
money.
that well no like would the money from the bank would it have been covered by the government or something? I don't know.
My thought is that maybe they didn't know that the money was gonna be like counted, and then later on somebody was like, "Yeah, we'll catch it. The money's all been marked or something," and they were like, "Oh."
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, to be fair, he does sound kind of larger than life, the character of DB Cooper, which means that maybe it was made up. Like that could indicate to the like he was just too cool, and that you see these stewardesses trying to explain it, like, oh yeah, he said, I don't have a grudge with you, miss. I just have a grudge. And just like imagining this James Bond-esque figure. Maybe you should just watch James Bond recently. It's like,
Yeah.
Maybe it was all a fever dream.
maybe it was. Maybe they just ran through a cloud of some weird shit,
Yeah.
chemtrails or something, and it just
yeah,
turned them
of
all.
course. It does sound like a Twilight Zone episode.
It does.
Yeah, apparently, I haven't seen this show yet, but apparently that Loki TV show from Disney,
Yes.
they have
Yes.
him posing as DB Cooper and just disappearing, like time traveling afterwards.
Really?
I
Yeah,
think
that's
so.
what they yeah, I've seen the episode. They basically just I don't know, like Thor makes him do it for whatever reason because he lost a bet or something. And
Oh my
then,
god.
I don't know. That's the only reason I wanted to see that show. But I have two more quick points I want to mention, and then we'll get into our final thoughts. Because we're going for quite a. I was telling him before the shoot, before we started recording. I was like, we're gonna do this a bit quicker, but I know this has been a fun one. We're going for an hour and a half, Anyways, first off, DB Cooper case had major ramifications for the U.S. airplane industry. So after the DB Cooper hijacking, there was a noted uptake in airplane hijackings, an extreme noted uptake, because the template that DB Cooper laid out was really easy to follow. You just get a 727, jump out the back, and you can probably survive. And it was quite easy to do. Like in 1972 alone, there were 31 hijackings. The majority of those were demanding money, DB Cooper style, jumping out the back. And most of them actually survived and got a little whiles before the FBI caught them.
Oh wow.
This was not a very good thing. So they ended up doing a few things. First off, they introduced on the 727s a DB Cooper switch. which is basically a switch on the tail on the rear staircase, which prevented it from being opened during flight because it didn't need to be opened during flight. Why would you ever need to open it during flight? So,
Very
and that
clever.
solved a lot of the issues. And secondly, they also introduced bag checks to airports to check for bombs because nobody had the idea to do that beforehand.
That's interesting to me that it would take that long before.
I love the naivete of that time. Like, oh, well, surely nobody would take a gun into an airplane and shoot people with it.
Yeah.
That would be ever so ghastly.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, it's a major turning point because, as you were saying earlier, Han, 9/11 caused the major changes. No, it was actually DB Cooper who first caused like the first major changes in airplane, security.
Oh.
That's very interesting. Yeah. Maybe here's a new theory. Maybe he was just a concerned citizen who noticed how lax security was, and he took it into his own hands. He was just trying to help.
It's like an old school. It's like an old school version of ethical hackers.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, nobody got hurt during this.
White hat plane jacker.
Yeah. I want to finish on this note of this other DB Cooper clone who was not as good as DB Cooper. And I just wanted to throw in here because it was the craziest story I've ever, well, not the craziest one I've ever read, but it was pretty funny. So, 1980, this guy called Glenn K. Tripp, weird last name, never trust that last name. He stumbled onto a plane, a 727, flying a specific...
Or did he trip onto a plane?
Oh.
Yeah. Anyways, he went on, demanded $600,000 in bills, 2 parachutes, plus the assassination of his boss at work.
So he really had a grudge.
Yeah, which I didn't know you could just demand that as like a hijack or something. It's like, yeah, sorry, Larry, but this guy demanded you get assassinated, and it's for the good of the people, So,
I mean, sure, you can demand it, but it's not gonna they're not gonna do it.
Yeah, Simon. In case you're ever hijacking and making demands, you can demand whatever you want.
This is, I
Doesn't
mean,
mean you're gonna.
it's interesting though. You're basically making the police do a trolley problem.
well,
Yeah.
this one guy's bad boss, or these
Yeah,
people.
exactly. Do we kill this one asshole who's innocent, or do we let this guy blow up an airplane? Well, that's interesting.
It'd be even funnier if that boss had like a ton of complaints from a bunch of employees.
Yeah, but trust me, he's a really bad egg. Nobody would mind if he died. He doesn't have a wife. He doesn't have kids.
He has
It's
no
all
family
fine.
on
There's
record.
no family on record. He's just an all-around loser. You can take him out. It's better than everyone in this airplane.
Anyways, the way this situation was resolved was bureaucratic delay. So it landed at the airport, but there was a 10-hour standoff between the police, the FBI, and the plane itself about getting the demands right because they're like, we're not going to assassinate him. You got to do something else. Eventually, they did these tactics. These tactics kind of worked because he lowered his demands. Guess what he lowered them to?
Just kicking the boss in the balls.
Break his knees.
Well, he dropped the boss entirely, unfortunately. He demanded 3 cheeseburgers and a getaway car.
I can now. Those are some things I can relate to. The guy's been sitting in this airplane with all this this whole stressing situation. You know what? I really just want a cheeseburger.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? Make it 3.
Bureaucracy is a force of nature. Having to deal with that, I definitely get it.
You imagine being the operative being sent out to the McDonald's to buy those hamburgers. Like, sir, you do not I'm sorry, you don't understand how imperative it is that we get these hamburgers right now. I'm sorry, people. This is a matter of national security.
Yeah.
I have to cut the line.
These demands were sufficient, and he got them. And he actually did a nice little police chase, but eventually he was pulled over and arrested.
I hope those cheeseburgers were worth it.
The story doesn't end here, though. 3 years later, Glenn K. Tripp got on the same airplane, flying the same flight route to try it again. This time...
How did he get out after 3 years?
That was also I was wondering. Apparently, our piracy only gives you like a 2-year sentence or something.
But the other guy got 42 years.
45.
Yeah.
Regardless, 3 years later, he managed to trip his way onto the same plane, same air route, like same journey basically, which I thought was pretty stupid as well. Got on the plane and was like, yo, This time, I want to be flown to Afghanistan.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, he wanted to be flown to Afghanistan in the 1980s.
Did he think he'd like hide in the crossfire of the Soviet-Afghan war?
I just think this guy was an idiot.
To be fair, he might just been like thinking in his head. He's like, I'm gonna go there. I'm gonna support support the fight against the commies. There's one thing I hate more than the U.S. and than this company. That's the commies.
Yeah. Regardless, this time his demands weren't as satisfactory, and in the ensuing police standoff, FBI standoff, he was shot and tragically killed. And that is the story of Glenn K. Tripp.
Wow, that's why lightning doesn't strike twice.
Nah.
Exactly.
Get shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The first time lightning strikes. The second time the bullet strikes.
The first time you get free cheeseburgers and a cool little car, but you know.
Yeah, that's quite a notable step down.
This time
from
you
the first.
just got a lead sandwich. Poor
Okay.
guy.
So that about wraps up DB Cooper. And let's give our final impressions. Do we think he survived the jump? Do we think one of the people we talked about was him? Or do we think there was some kind of different explanation? Ryan, do you want to go first?
Yeah, so I'll say that this is, I think, one of the just classic mystery stories. Like it grabs the imagination so perfectly. There's so many unknowns, so many things that could have gone wrong that you just can't help but hope they all went right. Like
Mhm.
I wish with all my heart that it was Mayfield. Is that was its name, right?
Yeah,
Mayfield.
Ted Mayfield.
Yeah. Or not even Mayfield. That's just like another red herring. That he is just the ultimate troll in aviation history. Just wanted to fuck with people, and that's all he did it for. I really hope that's what's true, but we'll never know. Like it's too perfect in that we'll never know the true answer to this. And
Mm-hmm.
I do like to think he just kind of blundered out of the airplane like this picture. It's just
I
didn't think this through.
Yeah, like honestly, if we want to go like full realistic, he's probably dead. He probably died on.
Well, I mean, he's most likely going to be dead anyway at this point, but he probably
true.
died at that point.
True.
Yeah.
But definitely, not definitely, but high chance he's just straight up dead, and for whatever reason they couldn't find all of the money. That's the most likely answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'll sign off on that too. Is he jumped out of the airplane, didn't think it through, died like a chump, and the money kind of got scattered over a really like foresty kind of area, and it just kind of found its way. So maybe at some point people are going to dig up some more DB Cooper money, if it's even still there. But yeah, that seems like the most realistic outcome.
I like the inside job idea. I know it's not as sexy and glamorous, but yeah, I don't know.
I mean, it's a classic conspiracy.
No,
It is. It is. I'm making a conspiracy again, but yeah. No, I just love this case. I think it's great, and it's just so much to it. And there's just so many suspects, which each have like at least somewhat like makes you think a little. At least made me think a little. You guys shot it.
Yeah, but then it makes me wonder, like, in cases like this, how many people have plausible stories, like that. Again, it's like it goes back to just the imagination. It's so easy to let your mind fill the gaps in and just attach to any story that you want to be true.
Yeah. Well, I think that just about wraps it up for today. Thank you again for coming on, Ryan. Any final words you want to share with the audience? Any advice on air piracy that you learned from this episode?
Don't hijack a plane. That's my advice. It seems to have an even lower success rate than bank robberies, which is also a really bad idea. So yeah, don't hijack. There's plenty of other ways to make money, even illicitly. Not that I'm advocating that.
Yeah, cool.
But yeah, no, and it's a classic story. It's just such a fun one. It grabs the imagination, and I think it's great that the mystery has never been solved, because now we just all get to pretend what we want to be true is true.
Any final words as well, Han?
Yeah, I agree mostly with it. The fact that it hasn't been solved kind of makes the world a bit more magical in a sense. There's still things there that we're never gonna know, despite all the things that we do know. I actually never heard the story, so that was fun. That was interesting.
Yeah.
I think I wanted to say something else, but I forgot about it, so it probably wasn't important.
Nah.
Oh, well, was it just going to admit that you are DB Cooper?
I was going to give my advice for hijacking a plane. So if you do hijack a plane, bring a helmet.
That's FBI approved advice, because they kind of said that.
Yeah, no. Honestly, jumping out of a plane is really stressful on the eyes. Like,
But yeah, he had the sun. He had the shades. He had the shades.
what? Yeah, but you know what happens to the shades? They
Well,
get blown off immediately.
See, that would have been the most impressive thing if he landed and was still wearing the sunglasses.
Still wearing the sunglasses. Just takes out the sunglasses. Like he just kind of wipes up some of the dirt from his thing, and he just takes out the sunglasses and walks away with his bag
Yep.
of money. That is canon.
And then pulls an apple out of his jacket pocket and just takes a big bite.
Just flings it in the air and takes a bite. Yeah.
Yeah, and then credits.
And
end
then
credits.
and then Baker Street starts playing.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is what happened. There's no way of convincing me anything else on this.
Yeah, there you go, Hollywood. Perfect
There
ending.
you go.
well,
Actually, I would love if a movie was made that like they go full on into the intrigue of it all, and then they have the balls to finish it off with just him dying by falling.
it'd be cool if they had a movie which, like, instead of sticking to one character, just flashed to different suspects and kind of like pretended they got away or something. I don't know.
Yeah, or it's just a movie where you make it about you really blow everything out of proportion. Just go for the grudge. You give him this whole backstory as he's falling out of the airplane, and he doesn't get it open. Like the thing's stuck, and he's just flashing through his whole life and his wife and his grudge, which is obviously going to be very heartfelt. So we're going to be rooting for him, and then you just see him close his eyes in like a flash of money that is flying all around, and then. And credits.
Just
That's
hits the ground, cuts to black.
Yeah, exactly. You just hear a crunch just when the black screen hits.
See some birds fly up. Yeah. No, well, I think, talking about end credits and everything, I think we got to end it here. I think this is officially going to be the longest episode I've ever done. So
You said it was going to be the shortest.
I thought so too, but it's a return to form. We've been gone for almost a month, so we're treating you this special DB Cooper episode.
I think it just goes back to how great the story is.
Yeah, it's
just
really
the
good.
perfect mystery.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if you like to listen, please give us a like. Please drop us a subscription. Please drop us a share. And as always, don't rob planes. See you guys later.
So yeah.
See ya.